Dixie mentioned I'm a sex educator, which comes with some stereotypes. Probably best articulated by my Lyft driver in Seattle, actually just the other day, who said, "Damn girl, you must be a freak." Which, oh, okay, but I mean, the fact is, like, there are a lot of kinky, slutty, poly sex educators. But there are also a lot of monogamous sex educators, and there are celibate sex educators. There are probably asexual sex educators. That sounds a little bit like being a vegan butcher to me, but they probably exist. And they're probably very good at their jobs. But so when I encounter that, and I encounter that on a regular basis, I generally say, well, compared to the average American, yes, I'm a freak. Compared to my friends, super vanilla, super vanilla. Like I have friends who grew up like tying up their teddy bears and like sucking instead of on pacifiers and like leather gloves. Like there's like an organic thing there, and that's for realsies. And that's just not how my internal compass orients. I can teach it, I can talk about it, I appreciate it deeply, but generally speaking, true north is like super vanilla. What I usually say to potential partners is that, like, I just want what I want when I want it. Some partners read a power dynamic into that, and I welcome that. But for me, it works, yeah. But for me, that just means like fucking. Like I just want my hands, mouth, things in people. I want their hands, mouths, and things in me. That's really just fun. I'm good with it. And the only exception to this is when I'm really into somebody who's kinky. And then I find like my inner service top comes out and I want to like deliver an experience. Like for instance, my girlfriend is kinky and I've learned to do things for her because I love her and I love seeing her in pleasure, and ultimately what gives her pleasure gives me pleasure, so I will learn to do things for her. And this is also how I knew that I was really into my partner, Reed Mahalko. At the beginning of our relationship, yes, yay, Reed, yay, wonderful. So, early on in the relationship, he was invited to teach at a thing that I'm gonna call kink camp. Kink camp, pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Like summer camp, but for perverts, yay! There are a lot of different versions of kink camp. This one happens on the East Coast at an old Boy Scout camp, which the venue just, So like instead of like salute your shorts, it's like salute your surf. You know, like instead of mess halls, it's messy holes. You know, like camp stuff. So Reed and I were packing for this event, and like we were packing our gear bags, right? So like that's like a vibrator, is definitely the strap on, obviously, lube, condoms, the things. But I realized I don't have any outfits, and this is a problem because I know that this event is going to be filled with like people wearing like their fetish fabulousness. And you can't like go without an outfit, right? And so I'm like, oh shit, I have like nothing to wear. And then I realized I have this thing that I wore to my very first book release party. My very first book was about lesbian werewolves. Sure, yeah, totally. It's a novel, fiction. I have had people ask me if it was non-fiction. To be clear, it's a weird moment. So lesbian werewolves, my first novel. And so I had this outfit that I wore for my very first book release party. And it was essentially just like ears and a tail, with a tail. And I see them, and I liked wearing it, it was fun. And people saw something in me when I wore it, but I didn't quite know how to grok. But I'm like, okay, interesting. So I'm like, I'll bring the ears and tail, perfect. So we go to kink camp, and the first day there, I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready to go out, put on the ears and tail, great. So I put on the ears and tail, and we just start wandering around kink camp. And people start relating to me differently. I underestimated the crowd at kink camp. People start relating to me essentially like I'm a furry. Which like was just strange. Like I carry myself with a certain dignity and a certain like loquaciousness, and you know, suddenly I have people being like, Can I scratch you behind your ears? Can I pet your belly? People congratulating Reed for taking me on a walkie. Like, it was just like, oh. Was not prepared for that. And I liked it, but like, again, like, it was new for me, because like, for me, like, the reason why I like fucking so much is like, I'm again, like, cerebral loquacious person. Like, most of my life I live like from here to here, right? And sex is one of the very few places where I can just like let go of the neocortex for a little while and just feel, right? I don't know if it seems like some people relate to it, but that's how I am. So it's really beautiful. It's an opportunity to escape this. So here I am, like, wandering around, like, being kind of in some sort of like liminal space there, where people are like treating me like a puppy, you know? And I don't really mind, but it's definitely new. So I'm kind of liking it. People are giving me scritches. Again, like, pain is not erotic for me, but scritches. I was feeling that. So yeah. So I enjoyed my first day at Kink, and the next day, Reed and I decided that we're gonna go have a little twilight picnic. Because one of my favorite things in the world is outdoor sex. Like, fully naked beneath the full sky, breathing the fresh air, being able to be as loud and as messy as you want, just like feeling it. It's one of my fucking favorite things. And Reed agrees on that. Like, Beltane is our Christmas, you know, like, yeah. So it's like, okay, so we're gonna go on a twilight picnic. And so we're getting ready, we're packing our bags, and we've got like the vibrators and the condoms and lube, we have a bottle of wine, and we have the squirt blanket, because the best picnic blankets are also squirt blankets. REI had no idea what they had invented. Yeah. So the squirt blanket, and Reed just kind of casually says, like, so you should wear the tail and ears. I'm like, oh, honey, I had no idea that you were into that kind of thing. Oh, well, sure, for you, darling. For you, sure. So I put on the tail and ears, and we pack the bags, and we start heading over across the meadow to the hillside where we're gonna have a picnic. And the sun is setting, and Reed turns to me and says, did you know that tonight is a full moon? I think, well, that's an odd thing to mention. I mean, I'm sure it'll be pretty. Yeah, okay, whatever, honey. This is a new side of you. Okay. So we're walking, we get to the hillside, we lay out the blanket, we put down the bags, and we start kissing and touching and fondling. It's really hot and heavy. And he says, take off everything except the tail and ears. Oh, okay, honey. For you, sure, honey, for you, I'll do that. So I get naked, sky-clad, if you will, save the tail and ears, and he lays me back onto the blanket, and he goes down and he starts to eat me out. And I have this splendid orgasm just as the full moon crests above the shoulder. Yeah. And so I'm having a wonderful time, and I feel really good, and he kind of crawls up my body, and he leans over to kiss me, wet and hot from all of my juices, and he says, would you like me to fuck you? I said, yes. Yes, I would. He says, great, get on your hands and knees facing the moon. It's a bold choice. I mean, doggy style is one of my favorite positions, but we usually like work up to that. We don't start there. I'm like, oh, hey, somebody's feeling frisky, great. So I'm like, okay, so I get on my hands and knees, and I feel he takes my tail and like whips it over my back to expose the area. And he puts on a condom, and he enters me, and we start fucking, and it's, for those vagina owners in the room, you know when you're just like, everything's like locked and loaded, like, yeah, we're on, cervix is like on board, everything's like, yeah! Yes, it was one of those nights. So everything was like, you can give me everything you got, and I can take it and give it back to you 1,000 times more. My body is on. And so he's fucking me, and he notices, and he just starts fucking me harder and harder. I'm like, yep. And he's giving it to me like feel all of a sudden like I'm feral, like we're rutting. This is like rutting season. We're fucking like animals and it feels fucking amazing. And he's fucking me really hard and he leans over and he says, "Ow." And I'm like, oh shit. This wasn't about him at all. This is a thing that he sees in me, that he wants me to experience, and he's going to be the delivery vessel for this experience that I had no idea that I wanted. And I love him, I trust him, and so at this point I'm like, He's fucking me, and he says, by the back of the head, squeezes my hair, pulls my face so I'm facing the moon, and he says, "Howl." I go, and then he reaches his big strong arm across my chest, grabs me by the scruff of the neck, pulls me so that I am full frontal towards the moon, up on my haunches while he's fucking me, says, growls in my ear, "Howl!" And I gush everywhere. I eject him out and off of my body. I cover his chest, his cock, and his legs with just a fluid storm. And I collapse under my own weight. It was good. And I have that moment, one of those orgasms, where like your like prefrontal cortex is just like offline. Parietal lobe, taking a knee. Occipital lobe, not even paying attention. Temporal lobe, just offline. The whole thing was like a breaker switch in my brain, just like, and I realized somehow, as like the pieces of my neurological system that creates identity and all the things associated with it kind of starts like back together. I'm like, oh shit, I was wrong. Kink and role play, they're not masks. They're not things you put on top. They're not superficial. They are a revealing. They are a loosening and unshackling. They take the parts of you that you usually hold tight and they just loosen them a little bit. And so I had this notion of like, oh, role play is some sort of like, no, it's all just like conversation and journey talk. But I was resisting. And instead, I realized at that moment, like there's just something more profound underneath that person that we're holding on to for most of the day. And in the book, the werewolf book I write, I actually say it's like the wolf, when it comes out, it's like loosening corset strings, right? The person is holding tight all the time. But when you really feel safe, when you really feel right, when everything's in alignment, you can let that go just a little bit. And something truer can reveal itself. And in my book, I give my characters the option to choose. The werewolves, they're people sometimes, and then they're wolves other times. And they can be articulate and cerebral and intelligent, but then they can also be something deeper than that. And in the books, I gave them the option to choose, even before I knew that that was something that was real, that you can choose when to be that articulate, intelligent person, and then you can choose when to be something deeper. And in that moment, as my consciousness regained itself, as I'm glistening in my own fluids beneath the full body of the moon, I realized in that moment, I have that choice now too. Thank you.